This is going to be the fourth episode of the Teachers Podcast. I'm here with Miss Kate. So Miss Kate, say hi, wave.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here today.
All right, so let's get started. First of all, I want to say thank you, Miss Kate, for taking your time during a Saturday to come over here and record for this podcast that Stucon has created and stuff like that. So
thank you for taking the initiative to arrange it.
No, thank you. Okay, so first of all, how are you doing today? How are you doing this fine afternoon?
You know, it is actually a lovely day outside. I feel like we've had a lot of kind of cloudy weather days recently, so I have definitely been enjoying the sunshine today.
Yes, I would agree. This very nice day today. Can you give us a scale from 1 to 10? How are you feeling? If it's a 10, which is really, really good, or a 1, which is bad. But
oh, how am I feeling today? Feel like I'm probably a 7. Got a lot of sleep last night. Had some fun today. Got a little bit of grad school work done, but got a few important tasks that I got to still take care of. So I'm not looking forward to those so much.
All right then. Okay, so maybe try introduce yourself to the people who are not in your class, who don't really know you well. So introduce yourself, any hobbies, tell a little bit about yourself.
All right, well, my name is Kate Royce at Espeha Centul. I teach English language and literature for most of the MYP, grades 6, 7, 8, and 9. This is my 7th year teaching and my 4th year at Espeha. Before that, I lived in the United States of America. I am from the state of Oregon, which is a really beautiful state. And I taught there for quite a while before I got started here. For hobbies, I feel like I'm pretty diverse. I enjoy being outdoors. I wouldn't consider myself an athlete, but I do enjoy, a good hike or being out in nature. I also really like to cook. And of course, I think this is kind of typical of an English teacher, but I really like to read.
All right. So you said that you were from Oregon, if I recall correctly. Yes. Do you have like a favorite memory from your childhood or favorite memory from when you were still in Oregon, or when you're still in school?
Yeah, from when I was still in school. Let me think about that for a moment. Quite a few come to mind. I think one that stands out to me was a camp that I used to go to every year in January. So when I was in middle school, every year on Martin Luther King Day weekend, which is a 3-day weekend, kids from my church and my school would get together and we would go just spend the weekend in the snow. And we would do sledding, stay in cabins, make our food. We would also have like worship time because it was a church event. But I just remember those weekends, spending time with friends in the snow, in the cabins, was just really cemented my friendship with some people. I actually broke my arm at camp one year. So that was a less fun weekend, but still pretty fun memories. But that was one of my favorite things I used to do when I was in school.
All right, thank you for that. So moving on. So this time we're gonna talk a little bit about not really your personal life, but you as in general. So sure. You said that because of every English teacher that you like literature. So what is your favorite book, or like what book do you most relate with?
Sure, man, that's a tricky question. I feel like it kind of changes every so often. And there are certainly books of the Bible that stand out, but because we're talking specifically about English literature, I'll share some of those books. When I was younger, the first book that I really was like, wow, this is a book that speaks to my heart, was Anne of Green Gables. And that, if you're not familiar, is the story of an orphan girl in Canada who moves in with an older woman and her brother. Both of them are unmarried, these two older siblings, and they adopt her. And she's a very creative soul. But she gets into a lot of trouble and scrapes. There's not much plot in this story, but the characters and the setting are so sweet that I always just felt so immersed in it. And I have read it probably more than I've read any other book. And when I moved to Indonesia, I think it was one of only 2 novels that I brought with me. So that was probably one of my favorite. But generally, I like reading any story that is about female friendships or sisters, because I grew up with sisters and I feel like that was such an integral part of my experience growing up.
All right, thank you for that little story there. Okay, so going back to as an English teacher, you like literature. What made you like literature, or what drives you to like literature?
Sure. Well, I think one, I'll give you 2 reasons. And the first is that it was really important in my family growing up. So my mom was a teacher. She taught a lot of different things. She taught special education, she taught 5th grade, she taught 2nd grade. But when I was in like primary school, her job was a reading specialist. So most of her job was helping kids learn to love to read and learn to read well and thoughtfully. And so that I went to the school where she worked, and I also came home to it. And so my dad would read with me every night. And it was something that we just did together as a family that really made me fall in love with reading. And when I was reading, I could feel like people understood things the same way I did. When I would read stories, I would recognize the emotions that the characters were feeling. And I would feel like I could relate to people, even if I couldn't talk to them about exactly what I was going through at the time. I felt understood when I read. And I think the second reason I love to read is because story is such an important part of God's plan for the world, right? God gave us his word in a book, the Bible, a story that has a beginning, middle, end, a story that has a plot and conclusion. And we, as his creation, get to be a part of that story. And we get to be involved in it. And I think that telling stories, when authors do that, whatever genre they're writing in, you can do that in a way that reflects God's story for the whole world. And so I like seeing reflections of the real world and the people I see and know, and stories being told that advocate for people, and maybe even build God's kingdom by writers, whether or not they are Christians. I think we're able to see evidence of God's kingdom in literature.
All right. So changing the topics a little from literature. Yeah. So one question, do you travel a lot, or do you like traveling?
Oh, of course I do. I think anybody who has moved to another country probably will inevitably like traveling. So I would have to say, yes, indeed, I do. Okay,
so what is your favorite place, either here in Indonesia or somewhere else you've been, in USA? What is the most favorite place that you have ever been to?
That is a really hard question, Owens. I think, like a lot of people, I'm really drawn to Japan. I got to spend a few weeks there in 2019. And I think one of the things that was most appealing to me about Japan was it somehow feels, and I've said this before, that it's like you're living in the past and the future at the same time. because you can go to more historic villages. Like I spent some time in Kyoto and saw how beautiful and kind of old the cities were there. But you also have this very like urban, technologically advanced cities in Tokyo. So you get to kind of experience both ends of the spectrum of like feeling like you're living in the future, but also like you're visiting the past at the same time. So I would probably say Japan is one of my favorite places.
I'm so jealous. I actually do really want to go to Japan, see the
Yeah.
sights. All right. So in Japan, there must be like, did you go there during like the blossom times where it's pink trees, very nice. What is it?
The Sakura blossoms?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I actually visited in the summer. I went with an old friend from college who was actually my roommate. But speaking of cherry blossoms, another one of my favorite cities, Owens, is Washington, D.C. in the United States. Washington, D.C. has a really, really beautiful architecture. And I told you my mom's job was, but my dad worked for the US government. So a lot of times he would have to travel to the Capitol and we would get to go with him a lot. And an interesting thing about DC is they actually have those same cherry blossoms all over the city that they do in Japan. I think they were initially a gift from the Japanese government. So I've seen them there, but not in Tokyo, sadly.
That's actually really interesting. I did not know that they had sakura blossoms in Washington D.C.
Yeah, they do. It's beautiful.
Okay, okay. Maybe I might have to go there and see the blossom.
I would recommend it. The other cool thing about Washington, D.C. is everything is free. Almost everything you want to do, all the museums, all the art galleries, doesn't cost money. I don't know how they set that up, but it's a cool place to be.
Might be in a bucket list. All right. So talking about sakura blossoms and do you love or like nature? Maybe you do. Maybe.
Yeah, I would say I do. I don't think I have a particularly green thumb. I'm not the best gardener in the world. But the area where I grew up is really, really beautiful. It's a forest landscape. The way I describe Oregon is it's like forests, but forests that go all the way to the ocean. So you'll have like trees and then a cliff and the ocean, and it's just incredibly beautiful. That was a big part of my childhood growing up too, is was spending time outdoors. We did a lot of camping and hiking trips with my family, and we always had a good time doing that together. Wasn't able to do a ton on my last trip, but when I was there in the summer, I did several hikes that I enjoyed.
All right. So you mentioned Oregon, and that gave me a little bit of a segue to talk about your school life. So how was school for you in general? Did you get
Sure.
grades?
Yeah. I would say my grades were always good. I was not like the valedictorian top of my class. I also probably had a tendency, like a lot of students, to be a little lazy, and that's caught up with me later in life. When I was in elementary school, I always felt really closely connected to my teachers. And I think I told you that because, like I said, my mom was at that school. So everybody knew me really well because they knew my mom. So I always felt like really special to be a part of things there. But when I got into like middle school and high school, I think I developed a real shyness, and I was very, very quiet and reserved in school. But I did get involved in some music groups that I really enjoyed. I was part of bands and choirs and did some jazz music and accompanied people on piano as well. So that was probably the thing I always looked most forward to in my school days.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that you would be such like shy. So did you lose that shyness later on in college or later on?
I'm sorry, I'm kind of interrupting you. I think I did. I was pretty quiet in class most of the time. And then that shifted when I went to college a bit. And I think one reason was because I thought, my goodness, you are paying $50,000 a year to go to school here. You better get the most of it. So you need to speak up and participate. Otherwise, you are missing out and wasting your money. So I kind of forced myself to for that reason. And then the second reason was I was getting to choose what I wanted to study. So I think generally I was a lot more invested and enjoyed the classes that I was getting to take because I knew they were things I was going to need for my career.
Okay, so talking about your career, actually. So I have a question here that back then when you were still in middle school, maybe high school, maybe in college, did you always wanted to be a teacher? Or did you always want to do literature or be an English teacher? Or did you want it to be someone else or something else?
Sure. I think I think as a kid, I wanted to be like everything. And I would shift from, I want to be an architect to, a screenwriter to the president and, just wanted to do all of the things. I think teaching was kind of one of the first things that struck my fancy. And that was because one, it seemed really practical to me. My parents were always very much taught me about hard work and being responsible and providing for yourself. And a lot of people I knew who I had seen be successful were teachers. I also knew that I was really interested in reading and writing. I'd been told I was a good writer. I think that would have been an interesting path to go down too. And I did consider like being a journalist or a writer at some times. But I think I was always a little intimidated by that. I definitely, so teaching was something that I was invested in. I knew I loved spending time with kids. I didn't really anticipate being only an English teacher, though. I actually started my degree as in elementary education. Now I'm getting a master's in something else. So yeah, I thought about doing that. And I also had, for a while, been interested in being a music teacher. Like I said, I always really enjoyed music, but I was always a very mediocre, average musician. I practiced really hard and I worked really hard, but I never had like the raw talent that some people do when it comes to music. But it's still something that I enjoy as a hobby.
All right. So next question is, when you were still in high school, the answer to this will probably be a segue to the next topic. Well, how did you feel of going to college, and how did that feeling drive you in college, or maybe how did college go? Like, so there are a lot of like grade 12s that are preparing for college, right? So
Sure.
How did you feel from high school to college? In that point, how did you feel about going somewhere that you weren't really familiar to?
Yeah. I think I always thought it would be very scary, right? I moved, I didn't move to another country when I moved to college, but I was far enough away that like I couldn't go visit my family easily. I had to fly to get home. And so I think in my head, I always thought, oh, this is going to be scary. This is going to be intimidating. But I also saw all of my friends doing the same thing. And so I think in a way that made it less, made me less nervous about it. And, thinking back, it was such a big change from, living at home, having my normal routine to the college experience was quite different. I'm kind of surprised now that you asked me about it, that I wasn't more nervous, but I think I was, if I look back, I think most of what I was feeling was just excitement, really just excitement. Yeah, I was never one to like feel like I had to be the very best or the very top of my class. So the grade pressure was not there when I entered college so much. And again, I did just fine. I graduated well, but certainly not like the very top of my class. I do remember one really pressing emotion was thinking about finances. When I was in school, my parents really wanted to teach me about hard work. And so they told me, Katie, we will pay for half of your college education, but you are going to be the responsible for the other half because we want you to value this. We want you to work for it. We want you to know how important this is. And so I had this financial responsibility, and I was only 18 years old, 17 years old, and I was going to this expensive private university and trying to figure out how I was going to do that. And I don't think I realized how big of a responsibility that was at 18. But I was able to get some really unfun jobs that paid really well, and that helped a lot. And get some good scholarships that helped as well. And I would come home in the summer and work. My first job, like real job, I worked in a lumber mill, making plywood. I know, crazy, right? But it was the best paying job around. And let me tell you, I got really strong, really big muscles those summers. And I slept so well because I was so tired when I got home from work. I would have to leave my house at like 5:30 a.m., go drive to the mill, work standing up, lifting heavy things, throwing things around all day. And then I'd come home and I'd be like, I cannot wait to go back to college. I cannot wait to not have to work at the lumber mill anymore. But I will say that was probably working there was the time I got really, really good at mental math because I was always having to count things and multiply things and do to make the right kinds of wood. I'd be like, oh, this person needs 120 sheets of oak wood. And so I would have to multiply and do all these orders really quickly in my head, and my mental math certainly improved. So it was a learning experience, but I was always really, really grateful to be returning to university when that time would come around in August.
Wow. I was really surprised that you actually had worked in a lumber mill to actually get some money.
It's unexpected, right? But I think it was a good experience, and I'm grateful that I had to do that because I do think it made me value my education even more, knowing that I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to have more freedoms that education can bring.
All right, so let's segue to the next topic, talking about college. So what is something in high school as an adult right now? What is something you wish you could tell your younger self about high school, about what to do, maybe what to keep out for? So
Sure.
what is that something that you always wanted to tell your younger self in high school?
I think I would probably tell myself it doesn't matter as much as you think it matters. Whether it was a bad test score or like a bad performance at a piano recital or an argument with a friend, I would just say, I would want myself to know that it doesn't matter as much as you think it does. You might think this is going to color your whole week and your month and your school year, but you're very young and you're going to move on from the things that seem like a big deal now. The things that seem like a big deal now are not going to be a big deal in the future. I would want myself to have that perspective and that long range view of life.
All right, so same question, right? What would you tell yourself? But instead of high school, what would you tell yourself, like tips, maybe? What would you tell yourself when you were younger at university or in college?
In university or college, I would probably say, don't skip your classes. You're paying for them. Yeah, I definitely had there's, attendance policies in college, and I definitely took advantage of them. And some days I did not go to class, not proud to say it. But in hindsight, I was like, you could have learned even more if you had shown up and studied more. Like I told you, I got fine grades. I was content with them. I had the little honors mark next to my name when I graduated, but I think if I'd worked harder, I could have learned more. And so honestly, I think something I would have told myself was, yes, I'm glad I had fun and I made all these friends and we did all these wonderful things together. But also, like, one of the main points of going to college is to learn. And I don't think there's any hurt in studying more. Like, I think I could have learned more if I'd spent more time studying. So I don't know, maybe it's not the most fun advice, but I'd tell myself, study harder, get the most out of these 4 years, because it's a really special experience and you're not going to be able to go back.
All right. So, to any of the senior schools, like maybe grade 9, grade 10, around my friends, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, what advice would you give us about school, about whatever?
What advice would I give those students? I think I would say be honest with yourself. I think it's easy for us to, try and shortcut things or think we're working really hard. And I would just say, be real and honest with yourself about how you're doing, because the only person you're hurting by taking shortcuts or stressing way too much about assignments is yourself, right? And I think, our theme this year of truth seekers, one of the hardest people to be honest with is yourself. So I think there is an importance of checking in and seeing, how am I doing? Are my goals realistic? Am I being lazy? How could I improve this situation? Because you're not really hurting your teachers or your family with, the stresses you put on yourself, or your own, or your, laziness, I think, is a thing a lot of students might lean into, or, kind of on the opposite, overwork. Those are hurting you. And I think it's important to make sure you're being real with yourself about that.
Okay, very, very philosophical, very, very nice.
Is it?
I don't know, but to me, it's quite philosophical.
Okay.
All right. So, switching from advice to being a teacher. So,
Yeah.
What is the best part about being a teacher or teaching in either this school, maybe in UIP, or maybe in MIP? So, what is the best part of teaching?
Oh, there are a lot of really great parts about teaching, but I think my favorite is knowing that the work I'm doing is going beyond me, right? I already see students who, I have poured my energy and time and care into, and seeing the amazing things they're doing. I think the best part of teaching is seeing my students' successes and seeing the wonderful things they'll do down the road. I told you one of my favorite books of Anne of Green Gables is Anne of Green Gables. And if you read the sequels, there is a part where Anne has a short career as a teacher. And she talks about dreaming how one day her student will be the Prime Minister of Canada and all of these wonderful things he's going to do. And he'll fondly look back and, smile and wave and think, oh, Miss Anne Shirley started all of this. And I don't have any of that ambition, really. In fact, it kind of seems a little silly to think about it that way. But just when I think about that, the people our students will interact with and the different ways they'll use, the skills that they're learning now, I get excited to see the potential in that and what will happen in the future.
All right. So, switching from what is the best part of being a teacher to maybe what is the hardest part of being a teacher? What is, sometimes it just makes you maybe frustrated, or make you like you want to take a break from teaching? What is the hardest?
I think one of the hardest parts of being a teacher, if I had to generalize it, is you deal with people a lot, right? It's not like you're just sitting at a desk typing in numbers. And as much as I love my students, it can be exhausting, right? When you have to solve problems all day and communicate with emotions. Both of my sisters are engineers, and sometimes I would never want to be an engineer, but I'm a little bit envious because their work seems less emotional than my work. And sometimes I think teaching can just feel exhausting on an emotional level, just because of how invested you are with parents and students and staff members and other teachers. It can be a little overwhelming at times. But then I think about the opposite. Well, like, what if I didn't have the people that I work with? And I'm like, I don't think I would care for that at all. Actually, I think that would be the worst of the two, to have work that you aren't emotionally connected to. So that's probably a really good thing, but can be draining when you let it get to you too much.
Okay, so a follow-up question. You said that maybe like being with people, talking, it's such an emotional and physical, right? So to anyone who maybe in SPH who actually does want to be a teacher, do you have any advice for them to maybe blow off some steam, or how to get off some of that frustration out?
Well, and I want you to know, Owens, I don't think when I say that teaching is emotional work, it's not a bad thing at all. I think one thing that's hard about that emotion is, like, you work all day and you care about these people so deeply and you're so invested in their success. It's hard to put that away. I know there have been nights where I am like lying in bed and I'm like, oh, I'm still thinking about that one student and how proud or how worried or I am. It's just hard to compartmentalize, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing at all. But I do think having outlets for those emotions is a good thing, whether you're going to journal or have somebody to talk to, or do artwork, or maybe you're a runner and you process your emotions through exercise. I think I would say find your outlet, find a way to get those feelings, expressed.
All right, so just about the last question of this topic, and I'm sorry if you're tired of hearing this, but what do you wish you knew sooner about being a teacher?
About being a teacher? Sure, no problem. I feel like I actually knew quite a bit. I don't think I was prepared to know. I think it's hard to know how difficult it is. When you look at it from the outside, especially I started teaching elementary school, you think, oh, they're, playing, having fun, making art. And even that's, well, number one, that's not your whole job. And number two, even if it was, it's not easy. It's not easy. So I think I wish I had a better awareness of how challenging it would be. And, you rise to the challenge and you understand, but I don't think that's something that's communicated always, is the difficulties that come with it.
All right, so that was the last question for teaching, or like being a teacher. So the next topic is actually not really a topic at all, but it's some students' questions about
Sure.
What they wanted to ask. So
great. Can't wait to hear them.
First question.
Sorry, there's a lot of banging going on here. Probably not the best sound for you.
What do you expect from your students?
What do I expect from my students? My hope for my students is that they care. I think the thing about being a teacher, and we've kind of talked about this already, is how much you care, right? It's a hard job to like step away from, because there's a lot of love that goes into it, right? Not that I expect every student to love every class, but I hope that they know the value of what they're doing and the privilege they have in receiving an education. So I think that's something, again, we've talked about, like how much I valued my own college experience, and I saw how important teaching was through my mom and how important school was. But I would hope that they really understand the value of what they're doing. I don't think every student's going to like every class or every lesson, or even feel that everything is important. But I hope they recognize the overall value of education.
All right. So next question. Going to ask you this, but it was one of the students' questions, so
Oh,
I
sure.
wanted to put this as well. How did you feel about transferring from teaching PYP to teaching MYP?
You know, I was really excited. I was really excited. Part of it was scary because the students are so different when you're 5, 6, 7 years older. I was like, gosh, they're not going to think my jokes are funny anymore. But I was excited because I knew that literature was something I had always loved so deeply and enjoyed. And I was really excited about the opportunity to get to share reading and writing with kids.
Next question. These are completely anonymous, so I don't know who said these questions, but if you said these questions, your questions are coming. So
Okay.
what are the tips to enjoy life when you are far from family and your own culture?
What are tips to enjoy life when you're far from family and culture? Well, I think number one is I am so grateful for technology, right? I am so grateful that I can talk to my family, even though they're so far away. So I do try and keep a regular schedule with them and make sure we are touching base. That said, it's also very hard. So holidays can be really discouraging. Like when we had Thanksgiving, I do remember I was sad. And I would feel like I was missing out whenever I would go home. They'd be like, oh, we went on this hike, or we saw this play and we did this thing. And I would be disappointed that like, oh, I wasn't there. But then I have to remember all of the things that I am getting to experience that other people aren't. I get to live in Indonesia, which is a totally different experience. And I think a lot of people, when they look at what I'm doing right now, they're like, wow, what Kate's doing is so exciting. So I have to remember that perspective is one, I have an opportunity that a lot of people don't have. And I think a lot of our dorm students kind of have that same opportunity, right? To experience something new and different and have, a different daily routine than they normally would have. And while it can be discouraging to be away, I think it's good to be mindful of all of the privilege that we have in living away, right? I think gratitude definitely helps.
Okay. Next question. What was the most daring, bold, or out of the box thing you have done your entire life?
My entire life. No, this isn't like my answer is like skydiving or anything. I have yet to do that from a real plane. I've done the indoor skydiving. That's pretty fun in a wind tunnel. I think probably the biggest thing I ever did was when I was 21, I moved to South Africa for about 6 months. And I hadn't traveled extensively yet. I had been around in North America. I'd been on some missions trips to Central America, but I'd never been away for a long time. And I had never really done that on my own. And I think when I was just starting out my teaching career and I spent a semester there all by myself, it was a big jump. And I think it helped me realize that, there were a lot more opportunities around the world and there were a lot more places I wanted to visit. It definitely broadened my horizons. And I think the more well-traveled you are, the more understanding that you have to other people when you see more parts of the world. So it might not sound particularly daring, but I think just the idea of being 21 years old and going to a continent by yourself where you know no one for, 3,000 miles in any direction was pretty out of the box.
Okay. No, I didn't know you went to South Africa. Okay.
Yeah, I worked at a Christian school there for about a semester. I had a short placement and I really enjoyed it. It's a beautiful country. I wish more people would visit because it's really rich with history and then of course there's all the fun of the nature as well, and getting to see elephants and lions and rhinos.
All right. So there's this question from a student asking, if you were one day assigned to teach math, would you accept or reject said offer? Why or why not?
I actually do like math. Now, I haven't had to do really difficult math in a long time. I taught third grade math, so I don't think I would feel confident doing it, but I do enjoy it. I feel like my brain feels like it's working quickly, and there's some satisfaction in knowing like there's one right answer. It's more black and white than the humanities or literature, right? And it is something I definitely would enjoy. Now, would my students get the most out of that lesson? Probably not. Would we maybe do like fun junior school math? Maybe. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't do it.
All right. Okay. Okay. So another question. Pick your favorite movie/book. And if you were to be a character in said movie/book, who and why?
Oh, that's such a hard question. Okay, so we already talked about books. Let's talk about movies. A movie I love. School or so. And it is about a couple who travels to Paris, and and when they do, the man is particularly, he just loves like the romance and the intrigue and the history of Paris and all of the writers and artists who lived there. And then eventually he goes back in time and meets, F. Scott Fitzgerald and Picasso and all of these different artists. So I think I would maybe want to be, his character's name is Gil from that movie, just because he gets to meet all of these fabulous artists. And I think that would be pretty cool.
Sorry, Miss Kate, but your video was kind of freezing there for a little bit.
Okay.
Can you just tell us the movie title again?
Sure. The movie title is Midnight in Paris. I think it's probably about 10 or 12 years old now. And it's a pretty fun, artistic time travel movie.
Okay, so just to clarify, which Indonesian food do you like the best?
Which Indonesian food do I like the best? Is it a cop-out to say Indomie? Like, I really love Indomie. I introduced my family to it, and it's now like our favorite thing to take when we go camping, because it's so easy and so delicious. But I love soto betawi. I love pretty much any kind of satay. I feel like my spicy tolerance has gone up since I've moved here. I like spicier food than I used to.
All right. I mean, Indomie is an Indonesian food. So
I feel like it doesn't really count, does it? But I do really enjoy it.
All right. So that is actually the last question of the student askings and student questions. And I think, yeah, we're just about done. So thank you, Miss Kate, for coming here and talking about your life, talking about some advices you could give to students. And actually,
yes.
there is actually a message here from my forms. A student put this message here. I just wanted, you are by far one of the most my most favorite teacher, and I really love being in your class because of your extremely positive and upbeat personality. Looking forward to talking with you about the random things on your desk again in the future.
Oh, that's really sweet. Well, thank you, whoever said that. That is so encouraging to hear.
That was just one of the message. That was just a message that was in the forms that I asked. So, yeah. Anything else any last things that you want to tell the people of the world, the people of SPH? Yeah.
anything I want to tell the people of SPH? Whew, I feel like a big message. I'm so happy to be here. I feel like I just want SPH to know how, grateful I am to get to spend time with these students and how much I enjoy it too. It's, yeah, we talked about how teaching can be a hard work at times, but mostly it's just rewarding, and it's rewarding because of the kids we get to work with. So thanks for being here, and thanks for being a part of things, and all of you guys who make our school such a cool place.
That's very nice. Okay. So thank you, Miss Kate. That will be the end of our podcast for episode 4.
Mhm.
I hope to see you Monday.
Yeah, see you Monday.
See
Bye,
you.
Owen.
Thank you, Miss
All
Kate.
right.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.